Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Spotlight on CS Ops. I'm Jean Aron, and I'm here with my co-host Matthew Lind. Hi Matthew.
Hello, Jean. Great to see you.
Great to see you as well. And today we have the pleasure of speaking with two folks, Roxanne Rodriguez and Tyler McNally. Tyler McNally is maybe a name that you've heard before. He was at Gainsight for almost 7 years, and together they now work at Ellevation Education. So, a real pleasure to have you both here today.
Thank you for having
Great to
us.
be here.
Do you want to tell us maybe a little bit about your backgrounds and sort of how you got to Ellevation?
Yeah, Roxy, you want to get us started?
Sure. So I'm Roxanne. I also Roxy. And I have actually been in the field of customer success for about 9 years now. I started my career back in 2016 as an SDR at Nearpod, my favorite story to ever talk about. And I slowly became I was an SDR, quickly became frustrated with being an SDR because I had to give all my leads to the sales folks. And I was like, I want to keep working with them. So I talked to our CEO, and my first job was great. You can be on customer success. Here's 1,000 customers, $3,000 less. And you can figure out what we need to do for these customers. So, that was my first intro to ops, I guess. I was segmenting accounts, I was creating marketing campaigns. And it was the first time in my career, really, that I loved my job. So I've held many positions since then at different ed tech companies. And most recently, I'm at Ellevation with a focus on operations. So I get to be the head of our CS ops team, or really customer experience ops team, where we are now. And yeah, that's my story.
Awesome. And then
And
I
Tyler?
go Tyler McNally. I lead everything post-sales here at Ellevation. So that includes implementation, success, support, ops, training, and digital. We do a lot of different things. We're I would say, a medium size and very mighty team on a journey to get a lot more efficient. We're very good at what we do. We have great, net retention, gross retention. Our goal is to get more efficient on the CS ops side, and that's been a big focus with Roxy and I over the last year. I've been in Ellevation for a year. Before that, like Jean said, 7 years at Gainsight, doing customer success for the customer success company. It was very meta, and I loved it. Had a chance started with SMD customer success, then mid-market. Then we started acquiring companies, and in a similar way, I was handed the customer base for our first acquisition, a company called Aptrinsic, now Gainsight PX. It was a fraction of the price point of Gainsight CS, and we had to figure out how to do customer success in a way very different than we did with the CS platform. That's, I think, where I developed my love of scale. I'm a nerd. I love figuring out processes and systems. And so I moved over to ops at Gainsight and digital, and I ran everything behind the scenes, working with customers or supporting customer success managers. So I was taking the blood, sweat, and tears of being in CS and trying to give something back to our CS team.
The CS team loves folks like us, or like you, Tyler. It's like, finally, someone who gets me. I'm hearing a theme of skill. Tyler, you're saying, like, using the PX example and Ellevation of like, okay, we got to be able to be more efficient. And Roxy, you're like, here's 3,000 customers or 1,000 customers. Um, CS them, or so. So it kind of proves my axiom that CS ops exists, whether you have a person named that doing it or not. That ops function exists. So, Roxy, how did you approach? Let's go after those 1,000. How did you approach? Like, what did you do first? What did you do next? Where did you wish that there was an ops partner to actually tackle parts of this? Like, where does a person start?
Yeah, I think I started by learning Salesforce. So I started very rudimentary and then figuring out, okay, what are all of these customers? What is the number of teachers. We did it by number of teachers. It's a teacher platform. So it's like, what are the number of teachers that were activated in the platform? Then it's where do they live? So I had international partners were a part of that group. So I had mostly partners in the Netherlands and then all across the US. And so it was like, okay, we're divvying those up. So we started by that. And then it was starting to see, okay, who's using and who's not. So then we would build a campaign for those that are using to understand, hey, how are you using? How are things going? What else can we do to better serve you? And then while that campaign was running, that they were getting messaging, it was focusing and tackling on those that were not using so that we could at least save them or see what was going on with them. It was me and a counterpart, my coworker Brendan at the time, and we just divided and conquered. And this led later to the creation of our digital tier for success. I moved on and I worked larger accounts and actually didn't love working with my larger accounts because going back to Scale Nerds, I missed like the problem solving of, wow, I have so many customers, like how am I serving them or what am I supposed to do, or that like campaign mentality, or, so I sort of, I was an enterprise PSM for a while, but then I realized like I missed the other work, which led me into enablement. So I was in enablement for a while and really supporting our director at the time to roll processes out. And yeah. But
It's almost like that SDR background was beckoning, like, come back to us just a little, like not to re-enter the SDR role, but those elements seem to be the ones that called to you.
Totally. Yeah.
And I wanted to just pull something out of what Roxy said, because I have felt it similarly, is this desire and this need to find patterns. If you just work your 1,000 customer list alphabetically, you'll never get through them. But if you can find patterns so you can treat smaller groups the same way, and then look what you did. That is almost what all of customer success operations is. It's find the patterns, create processes and systems to manage the patterns.
Love it. I feel like the world is exactly the same way. So I think that's the nerdisms in us, because I share that as well. I just love looking at patterns and kind of figuring out like, hey, how do we attack this group and what works there, what doesn't work there. How do you like fast forward to what you guys are doing now at Ellevation? Like, how do you guys apply that there? Like, are you looking at the world the same way?
It's a great question. I think it's partially informed by, we have just transitioned customer success platforms. And we went live with Gainsight. We did a soft launch a couple weeks ago, finished up onboarding a week ago. And this is going to set the foundation for us to be able to see those patterns. Gainsight allows us to look at our very tiny customers, because in education, it's a power law. You have the 10 largest districts and you kind of have everybody else in the long tail. We didn't have a way to look at all those customers and normalize the data, adjust for size in some way, or adjust for the season. Schools are very seasonal in a good way. We can predict what they need to be doing based on the time of the year. And so I do feel like we now have a system with the data to be able to run campaigns, as opposed to before we had some data and then we put a lot on the PSM. We call our customer success managers partner success managers. It's a K-12 thing. But we now, instead of saying, here's some data, go figure it out, Gainsight can make recommendations about what to do next, and then they can look at that data.
And scaling the support is so important for education too, because we have, our partners and a small medium district PSM might have, let's say 55 accounts, but each district has quite a few number of schools. So it's really a large customer base that they're supporting. If you think about it from a school basis, not just district to district. So like Tyler said, those trends are huge. And then being able to break it down a level further to say, well, what's going on at the school level? Oh, this one school is the one that's dragging all the usage down. Let's work with that school, right? So Gainsight does a really good job at giving us those viewpoints through our dashboards that I think will be game changers for that group.
We were chatting a little before, just briefly, we were chatting a little before the call started. And I'm so excited because we are doing seasonal health scoring. We are adjusting what good usage looks like based on the time of year. I've never worked in a business where you could trust the seasonality like that. And so it's a really cool place to be. And you can see it in our historical data that there's just no usage. Previously, our success team had to say, oh, it's summer. So all scores will be red. And then when it's peak back to school season, everybody was green. There was no way to understand who's struggling during back to school or who's trying to do something during the summertime that we can help.
I think that's the first I've heard of that done successfully. Like everybody, to your point, Tyler, everyone's like, "Oh, don't worry, it's Christmas or it's the holidays." When actually, you've just buried the lead. You do have there's somebody interesting in there who needs help on the positive or on the negative side, and you miss them with the broad brush of, "Yeah, they're just all red right now," and I guess we'll just accept that, and we'll find them later, and then later's too late.
Yeah. Or you put the burden on the success manager to say, keep all that in your head. Even though the score's green, you're going to remember they're actually doing poorly right now. That's a huge mental load for success managers to hold.
So are your users like, I'm not sure, I haven't looked into your product or anything, but are users the teachers or the students?
Great question. We have two core products. They primarily serve, we're a vertical SaaS company. We serve English language programs at K-12 schools. So there is a compliance product and a professional development product. The compliance product is, can you show through data that you are educating your English language learners, you're graduating them out of the program, they're not coming back to the program? Essentially, do you have an effective and efficient program? The teacher PD takes all that data and says, here are the students in your classroom, teacher. Here are different techniques you can use that will meet the student where they are so that you can help somebody who doesn't understand a lot of the language be able to practice the concepts and start acquiring language and the skills they're learning in school at the same time. So our primary users are the people who run those programs and then teachers in the classroom. Although we do get into the student and the parent experience. So I think a great example is many states require by law that you send a letter to the parent in their native language that speaks to them to say, here's how your student's doing. Here's the support you can provide them. Are you okay with us providing that support? The platform allows us to automatically do all those translations. And instead of a paper-based process, it's entirely digital. So there's a big efficiency play, and then there's a big teacher efficacy play.
That makes sense. And I guess then like just doubling down on this like notion of like the seasonality of it, I'm curious, like, do you guys shut down like pretty much everything else like as well? Like not only the health score that goes maybe, I don't know, black or something, but like I'd imagine like campaigns and everything, because like those people go away for a few months or however long in the States, but does the rest of like, do you guys have all your programs and everything else all seasonal as well?
We are working towards that. But the other thing that I've learned after being here a year, and then Roxy, you know way more than I do, the summer is actually the prep period. It's the schools getting ready for the back to school crunch. And so they have a million things to do. They have 3 things to do to help their EL program. So how do we make sure those 3 get done amidst all the back to school chaos? Roxy, what would you add from your experience?
Yeah, teachers are usually off in the summers, but administrators usually have full year contracts. Maybe they get 1 to 2 weeks off, but they're working through the summer. So yeah, as Tyler said, for us as a company, our downtime is May through like July, but really we're ramping up to our busy season. So we're really doing all that prep work in the back end to make sure that we're talking to the administrators, we're finding out if they're working in the summer, we're having those meetings in the summer. So come August, we're like hitting the ground running with our partners. So yeah.
Love it.
Amazing work. So you've hinted at a whole bunch of projects. There's a Gainsight implementation. There's seasonal scoring, which is probably part of the Gainsight implementation. Roxy, because we are shining the spotlight on CS Ops with all respect, Tyler. Tell us about some of your favorite projects that you've participated in. They might be elevation related, they might be, but prior to that.
Yeah, I think so. I really loved this Gainsight implementation process. This has been a really challenging and fun process. We're two now three woman team, so we haven't had a ton of resources and we've done a ton of work. So this has been, I think, one of my favorites. But if I had to choose another, I at my last company worked as an onboarding manager. So they hired me to basically create and optimize their whole partner onboarding experience. And I absolutely love onboarding. It's my favorite part of the customer journey, nerding out here. I love that there's a space for us in the world, but I love the onboarding journey. And I think there's such an opportunity to build trust and partnership, especially because in ed tech, it's so mission driven. You are directly supporting students and learning and improving the lives of teachers and parents. And it's such a I don't know, it's such a mission driven industry that onboarding experience is your first level of working with administrators to say, like, we're here to help. We're here to help you make a difference in your district with your students and families. And so I loved being able to create that onboarding journey.
That's
And
awesome.
have you found I just got done reading this book. The author will come to me in a second, Reset, where it talks about leverage points. It's one of the Heath brothers, Dan Heath, I think. Reset, where he's like, okay, to move to efficiency and effectiveness, find the things that really matter, like find the things where outsized impact comes from right-sized effort. So how have you discovered, or have you discovered, like, onboarding in this case turns out to be a leverage point, or Gainsight implementation turned out to be a leverage point? Um, like, what are you looking at as far as leverage points, or where can you have outsized impact?
Yeah, I think, well, going back to that onboarding project, I think that you only get like going back to seasonality, you really only get these admins like twice a year. And that's the beginning of the year when they're in the planning period and then in the new year. Other than that, they are so in the weeds that they're not coming up for air till like November, December, and like nobody's wanting to talk about anything in November, December. So it's really creating the most value in those two times of year is really where you'll make the most uh, impact with your partners and planning and making sure that your plans are, that they're doing the pieces that you need them to do in order for the program to be effective. So I think that's one big lesson learned being in ed tech.
I've seen, just to build on that, things we've been working on at Ellevation, a really nice job of thinking through scaffolded support. So starting with, let's see, the way I call it is we're going to shake the trees. Let's use email or in-app. Let's get the people that are ready to take action, give them the self-serve. Then we have office hours where groups of customers will come together. Maybe they're stuck on one part of the back to school checklist. And then if that doesn't work, the PSM schedules a one-on-one session, say, all right, let's roll up our sleeves and figure out where you've gotten stuck. But Ellevation had created this before I came here, and we've used that concept across pretty much everything we're doing in success now. We're starting with digital. I know I don't have to say this to you guys, but we're leading with digital, and then we're saying, what is the added human support that comes on as people need it? Because we may find some of our largest districts, they don't really want to talk to us right now. They just want to solve the problem and move on to the next thing. So if we can give them that resource, that's one less conversation they have to have in their very busy schedules.
And one thing too that we've had to consider with this rollout is also our PSMs, right? Because they're the ones supporting the partners, and the time of our Gainsight implementation was really important. We were on a time crunch, but because we were going to lose our other CRM, but also it worked out perfectly to have finished onboarding in March, because now they're using the product. It's a lot of change for our teams when we switch these big systems and how they do their workflows with their partners. So now that, we're out of onboarding, let's say in March, we have a couple of months to really reinforce all of the pieces of Gainsight that we want them to use for their work, so that come back to school, they feel really supported, they know the systems, and they're not freaking out during the busy season. Like, it's already busy with our partners. Now I have this system that I don't understand. So the enablement has been really intentional to piece that information for them. So come back to school, they feel really supported.
That's
I love
great.
that bit of change management advice, which is be aware of your own seasonality, if you will. I did a tour. I should not name names here, but let's just say we deployed the CSP, and this had a holiday seasonality component. They were exceptionally busy at the holidays, and we did the CSP implementation in October, or at least that's when they did it. And then I arrived in November, and let's just say it was a little chaotic. So hats off to you for being aware of your own calendar.
I will say on the change management side, and I learned this from Roxy, I think I took it for granted. I lived in Gainsight for 7 years. I just know the tool. So as we've been doing training enablement, one thing Roxy's weaved in is we're getting our success team to present to each other how they're using Gainsight, not me talking at the group or Roxy talking at the group. It's changed the dynamic of our training sessions. It's no longer a lecture. It is a, let me show you how I use Gainsight to solve my problem. And then lots of discussion about that. And it's something that Roxy weaved in after, I think, the first training. And it's been incredible, the impact ever since.
Love that lesson. I think that can apply to so many organizations. So, Roxy, you were mentioning that you guys were on a time crunch, so you probably had to get a lot done. You work with, Tyler, who Matthew and I have known for quite some time, probably long before he even knew us, because, we all look to the mothership for expertise and best practices. And Tyler's name came up a lot in the early days of our careers, I think. I'm curious, so you got a time crunch. You've got a chief evangelist here that's probably got a long laundry list of things to do or wants and wishes. How do you juggle prioritization, that time crunch, making sure that you actually get, the biggest nuggets maybe in before some of the other things that Tyler might be asking for?
Yeah, how do you handle that, Roxy?
Well, funny you mentioned that. So it just takes a lot of conversation. I am a very direct communicator, for better or for worse. So I feel like throughout the whole process, I've been taking it in chunks, right? Like the first 3 months was our planning period. What are the things that we need to get in so that the teams can do their job from January to March? We knew our soft launch date was the 21st of January. So setting a goal date to say, these are the dates that, we're launching. Everybody has to use Gainsight to do X, Y, Z. So I think having those internal milestones was really helpful in letting everybody know this is the priority. Anything outside of this, we're not able to do until later on in the year. So now that we have launched and we're going with Gainsight, I organize the team. We use Jira. So we have a Jira workflow where if folks need any type of support, we input everything in Jira. Everything lives in Jira. And it's a negotiation of priorities, right? Because I'm meeting with Tyler, who is our executive leader, and then I have peers who also have things that they want to do. Like our director of customer success will say, these are the things we have to do. And then our digital success leaders but we need to prioritize this. We're bringing in a couple of other teams. It's not just partner success that's coming onto Gainsight. We also have our data onboarding team and our training team. So it's a lot of negotiating priorities, but I think just staying organized has been key for me. And then socializing and communicating the things we're prioritizing as well. I think being a direct communicator is what you have to be in a CS ops role, because you just don't have capacity to meet everybody's needs. And that's okay. It's okay to say no. And it's okay to say not right now, later on, and then create a roadmap for what that looks like.
Yeah. Love it.
I love Roxy's approach, because I have gotten overeager in the last 6 months, and I'll go in and do something or think of a good idea. And rightfully so, Roxy is able to have a conversation with hey, this is the impact that had. And I'm like, you're right. I got to be hands off keyboard. As much as I love Gainsight, And then the other
Yeah,
thing
Roxy,
that,
tell me you diminished at least some of his Gainsight administrator rights. I mean,
Yeah, but he's close. No, I'm just kidding.
I have my own
Two more
special
strikes and
permit.
you're out.
Yes, I need to be careful that I don't upset our ops team. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my privileges. But another thing that I think we did well, and it was in the back of my head, it was in the front of Roxy's head. We took 3 months to plan. And we didn't wait till the Gainsight kickoff to be like, oh, what do you need us to do? What do we need to think about? We started with what problems are we trying to solve? What workflows do we need? So when we kicked off onboarding, it wasn't what do you want to do with Gainsight? It was we want to do these 5 things. How are we going to set up these things over the next 8 weeks? And I think whether you're starting with a brand new customer success platform or you're transitioning, nobody's holding you back from doing that strategic work, that thinking before you have to talk to the onboarding team. And I would encourage anybody who's going down a path of implementing, try to see how far you can get without even talking to the onboarding team before you even meet. That way you can use them as a building partner, not as a ask the basic questions about your business and how you're thinking.
Yeah.
I might even suggest, Tyler, there's advantages in getting that sorted out before you've got the onboarding partner, onboarding person on the line, because then almost immediately like, well, okay, what is this data structure look like? What type of field do I need? And how would I load it? And instead you're able to just sit on the strategic and say, okay, what is good here? What is success look like? And then we'll get the partners in the CSP, the implementers to guide us there, instead of immediately dropping into the restrictive tactical world of how you would actually, I don't know, it turns out you can't do 2 of those things. And so
Yeah.
preaching to the choir on this one.
Is lessons learned from Gainsight. You know, I work with a customer and it was somewhat apparent that they saw Gainsight, the tool, as their customer success strategy, not as the thing that's going to operationalize their strategy. And so it was a lot of trying to figure out what problem are you trying to solve? Then we'll set up Gainsight to help you. And we took that approach here for the launch.
And I will say I mean, you guys know this, Tyler is a visionary leader. And so having a leader with a vision for me is what has made this implementation the most fun and like the most challenging project I've done maybe in my career yet, is because Tyler always had a vision and he's like, these are the main things we're working towards. Now, how are we going to make that happen? And so my advice to all leaders of, CS organizations is have that vision, because everything else will fall into place.
Roxy, let's just put you in the world where you didn't end up with Tyler because he was leading CS Ops at Gainsight and sort of knew the vision. Like, how would you recruit or get an executive on board with you? Like what would you recommend to get that vision, that inspiration to help you?
Yeah, I think as ops people, we always feel like we have to have the answers and we have to have solutions because that's our whole thing, right? Like we're the problem solvers, but I think it's okay to say like, I'm not sure, or like, what is another way to think about this? Or what is another way to go about this process? I feel like you can get caught up in always being the person to fix things and not give yourself a moment of reflection to say like, actually, wait, is there a different perspective? Is there a different way that this could be done? And so staying curious is so important throughout the process. And direct communication, just like, hey, we have this feature, like this is how we've historically done it. We audited all the processes from our last CRM. I don't know if this is the best way to do it. What are your thoughts? What is your vision, right? So pushing the teams to give, or the leaders to give you more information so that they're setting the tone and you're just operationalizing it.
And maybe the flip to that, or the continuation of that conversation, like Tyler, any thoughts like out there for leaders that are out there trying to figure out what their vision is there anything that you would, out of the 5 things that you guys did, like, is there anything that you'd say, hey, if you're a CCO or leading a post-sales group, like, here's a couple nuggets, or here's, some things that you might want to think about? Like, I'm sure you guys were focused on. Ellevation, but there's maybe some thoughts that you have around what others might.
It gets meta because I worked at customer success at Gainsight, but the kinds of best practices we were working on and publishing is what we're doing here. What I think is important though is we're not trying to do everything. So I alluded to a little bit at the beginning. We have a very successful business. Things are working. We know it can be much more efficient. So our goal coming out of the gate was not how do we rapidly increase gross retention? It was how do we maintain performance, but do it with less tasks or do it with less people needing to do the thing? How do we get more efficient? So in that way, our implementation was a lot of JO, some surveys, a basic success plan because we didn't have a work plan that multiple people could work on at the same time. I think it would look very different if we had a GRR, if we had a retention problem, we would probably start with health score and risk, and maybe that's it. And just say, we're going to work this until we turn around these accounts. So I think my advice is the best practices are out there. What's the one or two problems that you're going to go to your CEO and say, I can solve this problem with a system, or I can solve this problem with a strategy. And I would hone in on that as opposed to I'm going to make us more mature across every aspect of customer success.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing to remind folks as well as you're like going through these changes, creating these big like plans and having big visions is remembering that there's people underneath that are the ones that are going to be setting out to do the work. And for us, it's been important to have a very strategic enablement plan where we're chunking this, where it feels good. They're still doing their day to day. We're disrupting their whole day to day by creating, adding this new system. So always remembering that there's people and that the people need to be taken care of as well.
And people don't like change, period. No people like change.
Yeah.
Love that, Roxy. All right. As we start to wrap up, give us, Tyler and Roxy, a joint prediction or one prediction apiece on what you see coming down the road. I'll let you discuss live in front of us if you want to do something joint or you want to each do one. But give us an idea of what you see coming.
Let's do one of each. And if you want to double down on mine, Roxy, too, you can. But mine, I was the AI guy originally early on at Gainsight. I'm an AI guy here. I'm digging into deep research. The OpenAI tool. I think the question to me is the question everyone's talking about. How do you embed AI in the workflow? What I found, to be honest, is people just have to practice. There's not going to be this magic wand tool that comes out and you just click a button and it solves it. My advice, I give this advice to my team. You need to know how to use AI, period, at Ellevation and in your future career. So start experimenting. And then I want you to come back and tell me what you learned. So it's AI, but I don't know if it's like that killer feature. It's getting comfortable using it in different ways in customer success.
All right. I like that one. Roxy, he's taking AI, but you could take it another direction and stay on AI, or you could give us something new.
Coming next, I think I'm going to go a different route than AI, but I think just at our company and what we really want to work towards is renewal predictability. So I think that that's what we're really working towards. And to Tyler's point, being able to use health scorecards in a seasonal way, I think that that's going to get us to a level that I've never seen at an ed tech company. So I'm really excited to see what those results are and then what that looks like for our renewal numbers come a year from now. So I'm going to go the renewal predictability route.
That'll be huge.
I love that one. I don't think we've heard a lot on that one, on the prediction front. So excellent, Roxy, for creativity at the very least.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you both here. Thank you so much for joining us today and just sharing a bit about your story and a bit about where you guys are. Sounds like you guys are quite the duo, and I'm sure that extends to the greater part of your teams as well. I'm sure you guys are up to some pretty cool stuff that you didn't even touch on today. So thank you for sharing what you did and for talking with us today.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.